Hi, and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. Today's episode is all about what is a normal caseload. So, I think for therapists, sometimes it's kind of confusing to figure out like how many clients should you be seeing each week? Like, what's normal? What do other therapists do? And what is considered like full time for therapists? And there's just like a lot of questions surrounding that. And I think part of why there's a lot of questions is because the answer tends to be like, it depends. So we'll get into some of that today and hopefully clarify a little bit of that for you. I got this idea because someone left a comment on a recent video about like something I mentioned about what normal looks like in a video, and they just felt really validated. So I love hearing that, and I'm like, good. We all need to be supporting each other and just kind of clarifying things and not gatekeeping and all of that like supportive stuff within our community, because the job that we do as therapists is so unique that I think it's really important to have therapists that you can talk to, that you can rely on their opinions and experiences and just kind of learn from them. And also sometimes just to compare and be like, okay, well, does this feel normal to you? Is this your experiences? Because a lot of times, especially when you're newer, you don't know. And unfortunately, you can't always trust that the supervisor you have, the professor you have, even sometimes some of the coworkers you have, or the agency you work for, whatever else, is always looking out for your best interest. So I think it's really nice to be able to have some different people in your life, and hopefully this is a place where I can help validate some of your experiences for you as well. So what's normal? In America, at least, I don't know how it is in other countries, but I think that most of us tend to think of our normal week as like a 40-hour work week, right? So typically you work Monday through Friday, have weekends off in this field. Now, depending on the situation, it might be different. The setting that you're in, stuff like that. You might be on call. You might be working nights. You might be at a hospital. You're working some holidays, like things like that. But for the most part, most of us here are like, okay, we think we're going to work 40 hours a week. Now, within those hours, it's kind of hard to then determine like what's a normal caseload though, because you probably shouldn't be seeing 40 people a week. It's not like every hour of your day is going to be taken up by a client. And I think that could be tough for people figuring out like what their capacity is versus what the place they're working at requires them, because requires of them, because sometimes that could be different. So I would say that depending on the population you work with, depending on the type of work you're doing, and depending on the setting you're at, those are like the big factors of what's going to determine what a normal caseload is for you. So I think most jobs, the good ones, allow you some admin time built into your schedule. If you are working at or interviewing at a place that says, oh, well, you just can have 50-minute sessions or 53-minute sessions if they take insurance, because that's the minimum number for a 60-minute session. So if you have a 53-minute session, it's billed as a 60-minute session and for insurance purposes. So that's where you can get the most money, versus a 52-minute session is going to be billed as 45. I have other videos on kind of how insurance works with that, if that sounds confusing to you. And if it does sound confusing, it's because it is. So a lot of jobs will say, well, we want you to have the 53-minute sessions, or even like 55-minute is the norm. And then you could use those 5 minutes at the end of the session to do your note. While that sounds nice in theory, that's usually not enough time to do a note. Or what if you have to go to the bathroom, or you got to eat, or you've got an email that's urgent, or you've got a colleague that needs something, or you've got your own personal stuff. You got to check your own cell phone. Maybe you just had a heavy session and you need a little bit of time to just kind of like detach from the job for a minute before you can fully be prepared for your next person. So if you have a job that's trying to stack your hours, like, oh, well, you work an 8-hour day, so you can see 8 clients and you could do your notes in the 5 minutes or so between sessions. Run. That's not good. They are looking at productivity. They are not looking at your mental health. And unfortunately, a lot of new therapist jobs, they pay you little at times, and they are trying to get every hour they can, every dollar out of you. So not every place, but just be aware, because I've found that it seems like for more like newer therapist settings, that tends to be a bigger issue. So a lot of times, like I said, depending on where you work and how you work, who you work with, like that's going to make a big difference. So I'll give you guys some concrete examples because I think that that really helps. Because the answer of it depends, that's not really going to be super helpful to you to know what's normal and what's not. So when I worked in community mental health, I can't remember the exact numbers because it was a long time ago, but I know that we had built-in admin time. So I think it was maybe like 30 hours that or 35 hours we were supposed to be seeing clients or have like client facing time. So that could be group therapy you were running, or stuff like along those lines. And then like 5 hours of admin. My numbers might be a little bit off, but I know it was something like that where we had guaranteed admin time. Or the expectation was that we would have that at least for a bit, but preferably what they wanted was for us to have as many client facing hours as possible and to do our admin when we had a cancellation or on our lunch break. So that's red flags, obviously. And I know that we all kind of advocated over time because that's, I think, how it initially started was like, try to do your notes when you can. You can have like an hour of admin here or there sprinkled throughout the week. But like for the most part, we want you to be client facing. So what that looked like for me, because we worked, I think it was like, I can't remember if it was 8 to 6 or 9 to 6, Monday through Thursday. And then Fridays, 8 to 12, which was great. But what that meant was that, so say I came in at 8, I would have like that first hour of the day potentially to be like admin time. And then I would do a group from 9 to 12, walk right from the side of the building my group was in to my office for a 12 o'clock client, then have a lunch break at 1, which most of that was spent doing all of my notes from my group people or responding to emails and stuff like that. Then have clients 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then be done for the day, come in, do all of their notes, and start the process all over again. So it was really tough sometimes to manage some of the admin stuff, especially because certain insurances require a lot more notes. So community mental health, we took Medicaid, and there was a lot of standards that needed to be in each note. Also, the system that we used had a note template with all these different things that we had to have in there. So that was kind of heavy too. So what was considered normal in community mental health was much higher than what is normal in other settings. I think a lot of times it's because these places are underfunded. I think there's a huge need for these services. So they're trying to get as many people in as possible, which I understand, but it causes a lot of burnout. And that's why there's a lot of high turnover at community mental health, or a lot of people, and I'm guilty, I did this too. You get your license and you leave. And you try to find an opportunity that pays more and has just like a better work-life balance. So I think that that's understanding if you're working in that type of setting, you're probably going to have more pressure. On Fridays, or maybe it was Mondays actually, on Mondays, I think it was, what would happen is we all had like a little mailbox. It's basically like a big cubicle with shelves, open shelves. The notes person, the billing person, because at that stage we would have to like print a note and sign it and put it in her mailbox and then she'd file it. What would happen is that every Monday we would get a printout. Once I started really getting honest about productivity, we would get a printout of our schedule the week before and how many hours we saw people. So say they wanted 35 hours, it would say like 30 of 35. So they started reminding us every week of what we did or didn't do the week before. And that became a sticking point. So I had a great supervisor. She was amazing. So she would really try to advocate for the mental health department, because it was mental health and substance abuse departments. And then they were a little bit integrated, but it was still really tough because I know that she felt a lot of pressure from people above to really prove that the mental health department was worth it. So it's just, again, in those spaces, a normal caseload is going to be defined differently than it would be in a different setting. So just understand that and look for your own personal signs of burnout, of stress, because what's normal in an agency might not be your normal. And that's something sometimes it takes a little bit of time to define for you what that looks like. So I know for me, I wanted my admin time first thing in the morning because I needed time to like brace myself for the day and come into the day knowing all my notes from the previous day were done. So, and luckily they gave me a little bit of flexibility with that. But when you're seeing that many clients a week, expected to see 35 on top of like, I was doing groups and that would count as like 1 hour of a group, even if it was 10 people, would count as like 1 clinical hour. So I didn't get like extra points for doing groups every single day of the week for 3 hours. That can build resentment, as you can see on my face as I describe it. It can build some resentment and frustration. Going, oh my gosh, but this was like a lot of client facing time and it doesn't count. So that's why I left when I could, and on top of other reasons, but that was a big one, is I was feeling burned out. So now when I worked in a hospital, I did an internship in a hospital, but I was there for like 9-10 months. And for the longest, I was the only like semi-professional person, like, I don't know, closest to one to being a therapist, getting my MSW for like a long time that I was on that unit. So with that, there wasn't a normal caseload. In a hospital setting, there was, I guess, like a different type of schedule. There's like a census for the hospital for how many patients they can have at a time. But as a hospital therapist, there wasn't, or like a psych unit therapist, there really wasn't like a set number there. Now, obviously this is going to depend. Every hospital might have different requirements, but based off my experience, there wasn't a set number, but there were certain things that were expected to be done that I was the only person who could do it. So if somebody came in and one of their biggest issues was marital issues, before they sent them home, the treatment team would say like, well, we need their spouse to come in and all meet and discuss what happens next. Well, that would be on me to do that. If it was something along the lines of like safety stuff and I had to call somebody to remove the guns from that person's house before they went home, that was on me to do that. Sometimes transportation became an issue. The sheriffs brought them in. I had to call the sheriff's office to transport them out. So lots of random things you have to do. But for the most part with a hospital, you are assigned like group work. So I did like a process therapy group. I had a treatment team meeting. There was stuff like that. So there wasn't really a normal caseload, but there were responsibilities that I had. And my caseload differed week to week, sometimes day to day, depending on like discharges and admissions. So understand in that setting, a 40-hour work week, which you're typically going to work that, fully work the 40 hours, it's gonna vary kind of wildly based off the people you're seeing and what the needs are. But you're going to have like a general structure to your day. I liked that it was really fast paced. Since it was my internship, I was like young and excited to be there and, you know, happy to like see so many different people coming in and out and get all of that experience at once. But I know for me personally, I don't have a 40-hour work week in me. So it got exhausting over time to constantly like be up and out. I rarely ever sat down at a desk when I was there, like sat down by myself in a room at a desk. It was pretty much lots of meetings, lots of group stuff, lots of coordination and things like that. So understand that it's going to be a little bit different there. Now, when I worked with the military, we were expected to have 33 clinical hours. And so 33 like sessions a week and 7 hours admin. And you can figure out how you wanted to divide that admin time. Coming from community mental health, where it was like, hey, you can kind of make your admin time during cancellations or lunch until they started to be a little more lenient with us. This was like written down. 33 hours of clinical time and 7 hours. So then it's like, well, a normal caseload so for the week, it would be like they want you to have like 33 sessions. But there was no cap on a caseload. So it wasn't like, cool, I have 50 clients on my caseload, so I'm good. Don't put any new people on my schedule. Let me just continue to see these people, and as somebody gets discharged or goes down in frequency of sessions, then we could bring new ones. No, that's not how it was there. I think when I left, I had somewhere around 106, 108, somewhere around there, clients on my caseload. So if you work in a military type setting, it did remind me of community mental health in the way that it was all about productivity. So it was very much so like, get these clients in and out, see them when you can, but also you need to be taking in new ones because the demand is very high, and they want to be able to check a box that says that this person's been sent to mental health and been evaluated, more so than they're getting consistent healthy treatment. That was my experience. It might differ from different bases, different branches, but having talked to people in different branches, having talked to people who worked at different bases or had a different even people who worked out at in a different state than I worked, it seemed to be kind of the norm. So be aware, if that's what you want to do, there's no cap on your caseload. They're going to be more focused on what you're seeing, like what number of people you're seeing week to week. And like I mentioned, that's kind of the same at a lot of jobs. So what's difficult is that there are 33 clients a week. That's a lot of sessions. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of stories. That's a lot of documentation. So one thing people don't account for when they're making their schedules for work, or they're picturing what that's going to look like when they become a therapist or they go work in this new setting, is that there's a lot of admin. So you are responsible for the most part, usually for scheduling, for emails, for returning phone calls, for making sure that all your notes are done. And depending on where you're at, the notes could be extensive. I think with the military, it was like 7 pages a person. A lot of it you can copy and paste, but you also have to be extremely careful that your template was accurate. I can't even tell you how many people's notes I saw, because I'd get them from someone else, that it was like she, and the client was a male. Or it had a diagnosis, and I'm like, this isn't even for this person. So because people copy and paste and forget to change the relevant things. So that's also kind of a sign of burnout, because you're just rotating door of clients, and that could be really tough mentally, but it's also not fair to the clients or their documentation, especially if military and they're doing disability stuff at the end. But yeah, so I think that was not super sustainable, but in that system, that's the process that they made. And like I said, there was no cap on a caseload. So that's not something that's considered normal either. Now, most therapists, when they're thinking of what their caseload's going to look like, they're picturing private practice, a group practice, individual practice, and full time typically for those settings is 20 to 25 clients a week. I've seen the range even be anywhere from 15 to 25, depending on, again, who you work with and what your capacity is. So a normal hours / like a normal caseload is probably going to be much lower in private practice. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. One is typically the pay can be higher than certain places. Not always, but if it's a self-pay practice, or you're in an area where the insurance rates are pretty good, then you just might be getting paid more than you would in like community mental health or something, for example. So that means that you don't have to work as many hours to make the same amount of money or close to it. Also in private practice, there's other things that may fall on you. So if you're the owner, there's going to be marketing, there's going to be taxes, there's going to be bookkeeping, there's going to be coordination and networking and stuff like that in the community. There may be social media things that you're doing to put yourself out here. There may be website updates. There's inquiries you have to get back to. There's a lot of different pieces of it. So private practice is going to work a little bit differently, but a normal caseload, like I said, could be anywhere. I've seen 15 to 25. I've seen 17 to 25. I've seen anywhere in that range. So usually, though, by the time people are at that stage of doing their own private practice, they may have worked in some of these other types of places and understand that certain things just aren't manageable. I've seen some therapists push themselves to try to see as many clients as possible a week, and their private practice, or even like agencies and stuff they're working at, they're seeing closer to like 40 people a week. So I think that's really rough, because one, that's going to take a toll on the person. And it also, I wouldn't want to be the 40th person that therapist has seen that week. Like, it's just, I know some people can't sustain that energy, but not everybody can. So, and you shouldn't have to, is really what it comes down to. So another piece that I've seen when it comes to like normal caseloads and work hours for therapists is other people in your life not really understanding what you do. So I see this all the time, at least like once or twice a week in some of the therapy Facebook groups, where someone will say like, my spouse just doesn't understand why I'm not working more hours or why I'm so tired after I've worked 25 hours this week. And so what people in other professions don't understand sometimes is us working, say that you are in private practice and you see 25 people a week. Or even like you're working with the military, right? And it's the 33 hours a week. People are going, so I work 40, I work 50 a week. But what they don't understand is like, and this is how I've explained it to people who've been questioning me or just don't fully get like, oh, like you don't even work that many hours. Is you have to tell them, now imagine you were sitting in a meeting for 33 hours, but you can't get up and go to the bathroom. You can't eat during it. You can't check your phone. You can't get up and stretch. You can't take a break and go walk outside or check your, I don't know, check your own messages or scroll through your email really quick between. You can't do any of that for the most part. If you're seeing that many clients, like you are like regimented routine, like I'm seeing this person, I'm seeing this person, I'm seeing this one, I'm doing the admin, I'm checking my emails. So that's the stuff you're doing in between. But if you're working 33 hours, that's you sitting in one spot for 33 straight hours. Now, some people who work in more corporate jobs, office jobs, retail, whatever it is, you're up, you're moving, you're engaging with other people. Obviously, all those jobs have their own stressors, but there's a lot more flexibility sometimes in their hours and their ability to move and their ability to eat, go to the bathroom. And so for us, it's like you have to be locked in. So a lot of times when you explain that to people, imagine you're in 33 meetings a week. You cannot get up and move. You have to be completely honed into what that person's saying and not only listen to them, but analyze it and provide feedback. You have to help people process very deep, intense traumas. Like you have to be present for them. You have to remember a lot of things about that person and their history and past sessions and their goals. And you got to do that for 33 hours. Then people all of a sudden are like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. And the ones who don't even be friends with them. Or I question like, what kind of communication is going on in your marriage that your spouse is not supporting that? Like that's a whole nother thing. That's for your own therapy. But for the most part, it's like a lot of people don't understand that when we're working 33 hours, you're not actually working 33 hours. Even if you don't own a practice and you're working at an agency or the military, or you're working at a hospital, or you're working in a school setting or anywhere else, you are spending maybe 33 face-to-face hours, but you're spending not only the 7 hours of admin, because there's going to be so much admin in any of those settings, but you're having to spend that time researching stuff for the clients that you're going to see, finding like resources, connecting them to things. You're going to have to respond to emails and phone calls. You're going to need to talk. You need to go to meetings sometimes, depending on where you work. You're going to need continuing education credits that most of the time you have to pay for out of your pocket. Some of you might be studying for your licensing exam or getting some hours for some certification that you're doing. That's like a specialty. Some of you may have kids and homework, people you're caretaking for, or pets or other responsibilities, friends, relationships. Maybe they're self-care and you got to worry about your own health. And I know for me in certain settings, like definitely community mental health, I didn't have, I only got dental insurance at that job, but I didn't have a lot of time to go take care of the things I needed to for myself because I needed every bit of the time I had at work to knock out that stuff and then go home and study for my exam so that way I could get licensed. So there's so much that's on your plate that, yeah, it might be 33 clinical hours or it might be 25 clinical hours or whatever it is. But overall, you're really doing way more work with that's just the face-to-face. You're doing so many other things behind the scenes. Maybe you're taking trainings, you're reading books so that you know what to recommend to clients. You're in some of the Facebook groups looking for resources and things. Like there is an endless amount of other tasks that are involved in this job that nobody really talks about. And then suddenly you're in a job doing them and you're like, oh my God, am I the only person that is feeling like this? So that's why I was saying it's good to have a community. It's good to be able to validate for each other and for yourselves, like what burnout feels like and what your capacity is. So I would say in each job you have, because some of these things you can't change, right? If you're going to be in some of these settings, these are just the rules. This is the way things have been done. This is how they make their money. And this is how it's just going to continue to be. That's got tons of issues in itself. But I would say for yourself, understand what burnout looks like for you. Understand what your like favorite essentially type of clients, like what's your ideal client? What are they going through? What are the issues that you love working with? Because that's really going to help determine how burned out you feel and what your caseload size is. If you're somebody who specializes in trauma therapy, you most likely need to have a lower caseload than somebody who's potentially focusing on like, I don't know, say career coaching or something like that. Those are going to be very different types of weight to the sessions. So I think that paying attention to those types of things. What populations are you working with? How do you feel afterwards? How heavy are the sessions? How deeply are you affected by it? Are you able to take care of yourself? Is this job going to sustain you? Is this caseload going to sustain you? Are these hours going to sustain you? So really looking at you as a person. This field, a lot of what we're taught and a lot of what is perpetuated is that you need to be there for your clients. And even though that's true, it's like the airplane analogy. If you're not putting your mask on first, you're not going to be a great therapist. And I've worked with a lot of therapists who have really, martyred themselves to say like, oh, it works first and I care so much about my clients. And I'm seeing all of these clients and I'm not turning anybody down. And every person that wants a session is getting one. And I have, worked 45 hours this week and whatever else. But again, I don't want to be that 45th client. At that point, you start getting sloppy. So I've had clients come to me, some horror stories about things that have happened to them with past therapists who've been burned out. Therapist fell asleep in the session. I had one tell me that he saw a therapist. The reason he switched was because at one session, she was talking about like, how's he doing with his mom and how are things going with her in that relationship? He started therapy because his mom had died. So things get crazy. Things get sloppy. Things start to fall through the cracks. So at that point, it doesn't matter how many clients you're seeing if the quality of care isn't there. So really make sure you are taking care of yourself. Understand that if one person, because I have friends who they'll see like 25 people a week and that works for them and that's great. That's the amount of slots that they have open. That may be fitting for a large caseload that they have. I know for me, the max I see a week is 18. As time's gone on and I've done this work for longer and I know more about myself, I know that I need to be seeing less people. And I feel good about the people I'm seeing. I feel good about the hours I'm working. So I think I have like 20 something people on my caseload, maybe close to 30 because I have some people who are every other week and some who are monthly. So it's not all weekly, but I like that. I like that I have set times that I'm working. I can see how many openings that I have and how I want to fill those and when and what time of days I want to work and stuff like that. So really, especially as you move forward in your career and you have more knowledge about yourself and who you are as a therapist and what you need, make sure that your job caters to that. And if it doesn't, consider starting your own. So, or working for a place that allows that flexibility, like some group practices do. But yeah, there's too many resources out here to be struggling like that. And your clients are going to feel it. They're going to feel it. They're going to start seeing it. So I think it's really important to make sure that if you were concerned about your clients and that's your first concern, which you should be your first concern, but think about how it's going to affect them over time if you get more burned out. So even though the answer to what's a normal caseload is still, it depends, I'm hoping that with some of the examples that I gave today, that may clarify a little bit more of what it depends means. It depends on the settings. It depends on your burnout level. So yay for my friends who see 25 people. Love that they have that level of energy. I don't. So making sure you don't get caught in those comparison traps. When you're seeing therapists on, in these Facebook groups or at these conferences or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, I see 35 clients a week and I love it and I'm doing amazing. Good for you. Better you than me. I don't have that in me. And really kind of come to terms with who you are as a therapist and accept that and build the confidence with that. To be like, cool, I say 18 and I'm good. So that's what I like. That's how I work. And that's it. Or some, I know some that see like 12. Now, mind you, I don't know their financial situations. There's some that charge $250 an hour, so they can afford to only see like 12. There's some that they've got other responsibilities and this is all that they can muster in their schedule, and that's cool too. Whatever works for them. But just don't get stuck in that comparison, and don't let a job that is forcing more clients on you make you determine what your caseload should be for you throughout your career. I would say if you're in some of these settings that I've mentioned that are really pushing the limits of how many people you can see and your work suffering and you're suffering, then I would consider other employment options. So I hope that helps and didn't make it more confusing. But I think the ultimate lesson is like there is no full answer. I think there's what jobs require is normal, and there's going to be what you identify over time as what's normal for you. And that's okay. So lean on some people, get support. If you want to share anything in the comments about your experiences with what your normal is or some places that have pushed your limits, feel free to do so. I think we all need that, that ability to just like vent sometimes with each other. But if you want to stay on top of future episodes, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Thanks. Bye.